Alright, hello there. I've never done a tutorial before, but I'll try my best to do it now, because some people asked me how I make my animations, what my workflow is, and I'll try to explain as good as I can. But I can't guarantee anything, and I hope my English isn't too bad and I'm not too boring to listen to. So first, I think I'll make this into more parts, so for now I show you how to set up your animation scene where you can start animating. So when you opened your Clip Studio, Paint or Paint X, so if you've upgraded to the 1.5.4 version, which now includes animation, you can simply go to File, New, and you'll have this animation button here. If you haven't upgraded, then it will not show up. So you can just simply, if you bought it, go to their page, download the newest version and upgrade it. Maybe you have to input your key again, but it should be there. Alright, I don't usually do much of settings. I don't give my files names until I save them. Story name I don't do, timeline I don't do. So let's focus on the reference size. Width, height, just as doing a normal illustration. How big should your canvas be? Resolution the same, 300 dpi. That's okay. I always work like this. There sure are better settings, but it's a standard setting. Blank space is actually quite important, because this will show what will not be shown in the final animation. So everything I draw that is inside my blue rectangle here will be visible later if I export as a GIF or as a movie file. Everything outside of it is not. That's what I see when you look at 2D traditional animations or even digital. They always have this save frame, which is the inner part of this rectangle, and they have everything that is cutted off. If it's a big motion, like a character running from right to left and going into perspective from the back right corner of the paper to the front left, you still want to draw the legs even if you don't see them, because it still gives you the feeling of the character running, and it's easier to animate if you animate the whole body than just focusing on what you only see. So this space really is important. At least it should be. You can make it larger, you can make it smaller, but I recommend having it no matter what size you do in the end. So, what's that? So, story information, I have no clue. Story name, that's what will be in the lower left corner if you have like multiple timelines. Then you know, which are here, then you know, I think, on which story you are. As I said, I don't use this. The things that I use are reference size, blank space, and frame rate. Because frame rate is important. I animate with 15 frames per second, so it doesn't feel too jumpy, and it's still smooth enough for me, so I still don't have to draw like 24 or 30 frames, which is standard for bigger animated movies. And 15 is like, I think I heard it being TV frame rate for TV shows, for smaller ones. So 12 is also good, but I stay with 15. It feels right. Alright, so this is everything I use to set up my scene. If this is done, I simply press OK. And here we go. Now, if this timeline window doesn't show up, you can simply find it under the window, navigation, and timeline. Now it's gone. Now it's there. You can scale it as you want. You can even replace it, put it somewhere else, but having it down here is just perfect. Now, it already comes with a paper and an animation folder. The paper is a simple background which you just have. You can replace it later. No, you can't replace it, but you can lay your own background over this. But you also have this grounding. That's good. And with your first animation folder. The animation folder is the folder where Clip Studio throws all your layers inside. So if I drag my timeline a bit larger, I can, or I have to also drag my frames. So I drag the paper to the end, and now I will also drag my first frame to the end, on which I could start now drawing. Now on here I have these little icons here on the top, which are editing the timeline, adding a new timeline which will pop up here, like if you're working with multiple timelines to keep better track of different shots or such, which is good. I never used it before, but it keeps it more into place. Like here could be my first shot, and in the next timeline is a second shot, I think. So, zooming in and out of my timeline, and all my playback options going to first frame to last frame, moving forward or having a playback. I put my moving forward and moving back to shortcuts, so because I'm skipping a lot between frames if I'm drawing. So I highly recommend putting things you use often to more shortcuts. I could already use shortcuts for my shortcuts. I have so many. Okay, now new animation folder will make a new animation folder as it's told, so I can push it, press it, and here I have a new one. And when I look here, when I'm here on my previous one, I can use this to create a new animation cell, which will insert a new cell to keep on animating. Specifying cells is something I think that is together with the light panel, or how it was named, but I don't really use it. Light table it was. Yeah. No, here it is. But light table I've seen, I can explain later, I think. So now if I and onion skinning. Onion skinning you will see when I do something. So making first steps. So I have my first frame and I can start drawing a not so round sphere, and on the next frame, if I do the new animation cell, it will disappear, but now I can click on the onion skin and I will see my previous one. So now I can start drawing the next. Yeah, perfectly. Here. And I exactly see where it's going. So that's where you start. Another things you can do is you can go select the frame and drag it somewhere else to define the spacing and timing. So if I do the really close, the animation will be really fast, and if I drag them, the spacing between them will be bigger and it will be slower. So let's say I have a more complex animation. I'm going to delete this animation animation layer, and I start, let's say I want a character waving at me. So I know I have a character, I want to animate just one arm of him. I'm not going to animate the whole character. So I plan this out, I add a new cell with my character, which I have here, and I rename this folder to be my static folder because nothing else is animated in there. So, and I create another folder with another cell where I have just one arm. I call this my right arm folder. So now I can go ahead, do a keyframe right here, and let him wave at us. Something like this. Now with my onion skinning I can see my previous frame and the one I'm on. My previous one is the green one, the next one is the violet one. Now I can go ahead, do an in-between here, on which the arm goes like this, maybe something like this, and we have an animation. So I can make this smoother now, I can play with the timing, I can stretch it or do this. I will make my timeline smaller, because now if I'm going to add another one here, I'm going to make this closer to the green one. And just another one here that is really close to the violet one. As you see, my upper arm is kind of wobbly. This would be better if I stayed with this pose and just and didn't do this one, which I'm going to delete. Oh, you can just simply delete the things. You have to select them, go to animation, specify cell, and delete, to delete it completely out of your timeline. So what I can do now is, I know I want the frame number 2, or the layer number 2. I see I still have my 1B layer, which I don't want. Now you gotta watch out and keep it all clean and nice. So I'm taking my layer, which is named 2. I drag it and duplicate it. I can also just right click on it and duplicate layer. So now this is called layer 3. I go one frame back, right click on it, and here I have all my current layers from which I want to select the number 3. And here, as you can see, they are exactly the same. Here I can erase what I want to move and let things there which I don't want to move. So I can do this, or I can do this closer, so I have a nice ease out. And you can see the upper arm is better, it's not as wobbly. and now I could just play with the timing or do other things. So if I'm happy with it, and this is like the best animation on the whole planet, I can select both my layers with shift click and clicking the next, right clicking, create folder and insert layer, or simply again select them and drag them into the new folder icon. So you can see in my timeline I now see my folder. I can collapse it, no, not collapse it, I can close it, so it was nice and tidy, and I don't have too many animation layers to see, because this can get really messy after time if you have like a lot of folders or a lot of animation layers. But you've got to watch out because the folder has a visibility, and if I drag this down, I don't see my other parts anymore. I don't exactly know that. Okay, this was a bug. Also happens. So that's one thing that confused me in the beginning, because I always thought where the hell did my coloration go on my outlines, because I was working like in this part. I'll drag this out. This part of the animation, but I created a folder which included the previous part. Let's say I'm gonna put this into a new folder, and the new folder also has this visibility bar. If I go back, my animation was gone and I did not know what it was until I looked through every folder and found that I had to drag this here to see my animation again. So yeah, this kind of confused me and I did not freak out, not much, but don't get confused, everything's still there. Yes, that's mostly how I animate. It's like the basic. For my Undertale animations, when I have sands, I have everything on different layers. I would add a new layer, add a new cell, and like draw his fluffy coat on an extra folder, because this will be animating like so, and floating more around when he's falling or doing things, doing motion and all. So yeah. The problem with this is just that Clip Studio has a limitation of 999 frames, which I hope they will remove with another version, because that's just how I work. I have a lot of layers, I have a lot of folders and frames and such, so an animation which is, I say here now, 10 frames long, I'll drag this out, isn't always 10 layers, because even if I would collapse every animation onto my layer, I'd have 10 layers already for my outline. I'd have 10 layers for my coloration if I collapse everything on one layer, and maybe 3 or 4 effect layers which I lay on top, and this already would have been 25 layers, even if my animation is just 10 frames long. So that's a problem I ran into constantly, because I have too many layers and I have to collapse my things, and it's, yeah, not cool. So let's say I have 2 folders, because I'm going to show 2 layers. I'm going to show you what I do to collapse them. Like I have this, I do another one here and another one here. So these 2 layers have exactly the same amount of frames. If, let's say, this one was named 6 for any reason, this one was 2, you can collapse it, but you have to watch out to put it into the right folder afterwards. So you can simply select the folder, go to Animation, specify Cell, standardize in order of timeline, and now out of the 2 he made out of the 6 he made a 2, because this is first, second, third frame, so he standardized it. Now I can go ahead, drag these layers out of the folder, also these layers out, and this is just a workaround I discovered because you can't merge your animation. You have to do it as I show you now. So you drag the 1 down, drag the 2 down, and the 3 can be there. What I did, merge with layer below, so you have them here. If it looks mathy on your view, on your canvas, it's okay, because now you can select those and put it in any empty folder and it's back to normal. You can delete the other empty folder. So now I have my code and this ball thingy both there on one layer, still working. And I saved 3 frames. Another thing that I want to show you is when let's make an eye. So I have my eye here. I'm making a keyframe, oops, when it's closed. I'm adding some in-betweens, and now I can see green before, violet after. I'm going to make it half closed. With the eye slightly down, because you usually move your eye down if you close your eyes. Move your eyeball down. So, it's closed. Make it a little faster because eyes close really fast and take a little more time to open again. And the thing is, if I keep on drawing like this, it might turn out smaller than it was. So I can go here to my last frame, right click and select my first frame. You can see both are bold. If I scroll through, both seem to be selected, because if I draw something here now, it will appear on the first one too, because it is a reference. They are an instance. You can't change them. But this is good for things that loop, or things that have a constant happen again. Like if I draw hair that's waving in the wind, I don't want to draw it all the time, like for 50 frames, every frame different. I will draw the first 10 frames, which are loopable, and I'll copy them and put them behind. So I show you. If I go here and I keep on doing my eye, which goes like this. Oh yeah, I can draw anywhere as long as I'm on this frame, because this is like everything here is my third frame, and when I insert here, then it disappears. So I'm gonna draw this slightly bigger, because this always makes some nice effect. I'm gonna do this a little bit faster. There we go, blinking eye. I could also insert another one here, just nearly fully opened. Yeah, and it will loop. So if I have a character which blinks one time and waits some while, I'll just drag the one out here, and I can simply duplicate my folder and drag it. If I go here where my little hand icon shows, I can drag this down here, make it a bit longer, and drag the paper also longer, and it will be like this. So I can make this so. Now I have this little pause in the middle, and yeah, that's how I do it. If I want to do it differently, I can also not do this, but instead I could just go ahead and insert my previous drawings as a reference. 4 and back to 1. So I don't particularly need to make another layer. I can just reuse every image I have before. So if I look now, 2 is like 2 here, because it's bold, I can see exactly which frames are reused where. And the effect is still the same. So yeah, that's basically how I work, how I animate. If you have questions or feedback for me, just ask on my YouTube or on my Tumblr, and I'll try to answer as good as I can. And yeah, I hope it helped. See you guys soon.